Hello there, everybody. Sorry to be really quiet. For some reason, we're not getting this going well. There we go. Now we're seeming to do it, but I'm just going to refresh the page a little bit so we can see people's comments and questions over in the. There we go. Now we're getting things loading correctly. It was a little bit weird because I wasn't getting the question and answer section over there on the side, but now we seem to be having everything. And sorry to kind of keep you waiting while I adjusted things here on the fly. We've got a whole two people here. I tell you what, I haven't gone live in a while, so I don't expect a lot of people to show up. Hey, Susan, good to see you here. And so we're going to talk tonight about past lives and astrology. But while we're kind of waiting for people to kind of start appearing, like maybe a couple more people, why don't people ask me any questions they might have about astrology, aside from wanting me to interpret their birth chart online. So if you're just popping into the room, please just drop me a quick hello, just so I know that people are here. I'm going to wait for maybe a couple more people to show up. Won't go more than a couple minutes in before I start going into today's conversation about the importance of past lives and astrology and how the two things tie into each other. And, maybe a couple of concepts about time to throw in on the side. And while we're on that subject, time is a really interesting construct. And yes, I meant that. It's a really interesting construct. It's something that we, have created for a specific purpose, right? And we're going to go into discussing that specific purpose here in just a little bit. But let's understand things in relevance to time and how we tend to experience time, which we tend to experience time. This is going to sound a bit like a no-brainer in terms of past, present, and future. But in reality, is that really what's going on? Do we really have the past? Well, of course we do. Is there really a future? Well, of course there is. But where are you experiencing both the past and the future? You're experiencing them in the present moment, which is the one moment that you always have to work with. And it's the one moment you should always value. And it doesn't mean that past lives aren't important or even where you're going isn't important. But if you miss the mystery of the moment, it all just goes poof right past your eyes. And any value that understanding previous lifetimes might have otherwise had for you is suddenly not really valuable. Or anything that you might have been able to take in about those previous lifetimes in order to adjust your life going forward is equally less valuable because you missed the moment in what you were meant to learn from it. So it's an interesting thing when it boils down to past lives, how everybody always wants to be like some reincarnated king or princess or queen or something like that, but nobody really wants to be just the general person. But let's face it, we've all probably been general people before. Some of us have even been royalty before. And on a certain level, we're just recycled energy going round and round and round in circles. And the lifetime of a soul is infinite. And this moment that we're kind of sitting here sweating in and kind of fussing over is really just a drop in the bucket of something that's much huger. But we tend to get really fascinated by previous lifetimes, and we tend to imagine ourselves to have been something more than, who we are or what we were, because there's something really fascinating about that particular concept. And it gives us an escape, well, from reality. And that's where we need to jump into the conversation, which is past lives aren't here to help you to escape from the understanding the reality that you're facing in the present moment. It may be here to help you to escape from your present perspective on reality, or how you're seeing it, or how you're misinterpreting it. And I'm seeing people asking questions over here to the side. I'll get to that here in just a little bit. So on that level, it's maybe good that it helps you to escape from reality, because sometimes we don't always perceive reality correctly. We perceive it in a manner that's distorted by our senses or emotions, to the extent that we're not really getting a clear picture of what's actually going on. So basically, the whole concept of past lives isn't for us to be fascinated about who we were, or to imagine ourselves to be something more than what we are, or what we sorry, I said it's not even a word. Um, so the value of it is to help you to understand where you are at the present moment, and to help you to understand the patterns that you perhaps get stuck in over and over again, and how to pay attention to those patterns, and how to maybe bring some relief or alleviation from repeating those patterns going forward. And for those of you who are interested in exploring previous lifetimes, I presently have a consultation called the Karmic Story Consultation. And the Karmic Story Consultation, the next three scheduled today, are only $99 each at the link that I'm going to put over here in the chat window. I actually just did it incorrectly, so if you bear with me, I'll copy that for us. And you'll probably see me bouncing up and down in the process in the window. I'm not really bouncing up and down. It's just my desk is bouncing up and down. There we go. So there's the link to the Karmic Story Consultation, $99 on the next three. So if we understand where we might have been, like for instance, I've had this happen with a few clients. You may be in a position where you want to tap into your potential. You sense that you could do something really creatively wonderful with your life, but every time you get on the verge of doing that, you hold yourself back. Now, I've seen through the karmic analysis, the karmic story consultations that I do, I've seen a particular thing in a person's horoscope called Mritukala, or Gora configurations in a chart that's called the D60, that would usually point in the direction of when the person stepped into their potential before. They might have been put to death, or they might have been subjected to violence. And that's coded in our, kind of karmic memories. Some people call them Akashic records. And so then when we get into a situation where there's an opportunity for us to succeed or to step into our potential, suddenly we're afraid, because that memory comes to the surface and we just stop. But you see, if we understand that, then we can go, okay, I don't need to do that anymore. We can pay attention to it. And that's how the concept of past lives can really serve us. I almost said surface for some reason. That's how they can really serve us going forward. It can help us in the present moment to deal with the patterns that we're facing and to overcome them. So the whole thing of past lives, do they really exist? Of course they do. Of course, we, have been here multitudes of times. And of course, many of us will probably be here multitudes of times again, however difficult or however annoying that particular concept may be, it's likely a truth, right? But can we confirm previous lifetimes? No, we don't have a tool to do that. I had a student ask me once, I've heard that if you look at this particular house in the horoscope, it shows an individual's future lifetimes. Well, how are you going to confirm that technique works? You really can't. But with past life, or karmic story consultation, like I do, you can confirm these things to a certain extent, because once you go into it, the individual is going to recognize these patterns and they're going to resonate with them. So I firmly believe, all past lives, are definitely very real. I also firmly believe that they create karmic patterns within our path going forward. And some of those things we're meant to kind of revisit just to be at peace with. Some of those we're meant to rectify and completely drop. And some of those, all of them we're meant to pay attention to, is the next thing that I wanted to say with that. But if it doesn't serve you in the present moment, what good is it, right? If it doesn't help you, So, when we look at these things, we might be looking at a story, but does it really matter? No, because even if what we're looking at with past life readings through astrology, or if we're looking at a past life regression, even if it's not something that's taking us back into an actual previous lifetime, it's helping us to step outside of ourselves and take a glimpse in at the patterns that we have and understand ourselves almost from the third person. And that's a really helpful thing to do. So when you can understand yourself in that capacity, then you have a greater opportunity to break those particular patterns. And as I mentioned, the next 3 karmic story consultations that are scheduled are only going to be $99 each. So if you're interested in grabbing one of those slots, you can do that at the link that I just typed into the chat window. And I'm seeing your questions over there, Susan. I will get to them here in a moment. So past lives are not as important as going, ooh, I was a king, or ooh, I was an Egyptian pharaoh, or ooh, I was the rubbish collector in a town where the rubbish collectors went on strike, right? Nobody wants to be that. Everybody wants to be the king or the queen. Nobody wants to be the rubbish collector, right? So there's so much more than that fascination, because if we get caught up in that fascination, we quite often miss something that's really important, which is, oh, this is why I do this. Here's why I behave in this particular way. And through working with Rahu and Ketu, the North Node and the South Node in astrology, we can come to a deeper understanding of those karmic patterns and why we do the things that we do, and decide whether those patterns are helpful or whether there's something that we want to completely be rid of. But to just get fascinated by past lives for the sake of past lives themselves, sure, it may be fun, but it needs to serve us going forward. We need to understand why. We need to make use of that information so that we can make it sacred. In essence, the whole concept of past and the whole concept of future, it's all happening right now. It's all happening right now. So even if we talk about past lives, it's present right now. Even if we're concerned about the future, that future potential is within us in the moment right now. We may not subjectively be experiencing it, but that potential is right here in the moment. So this moment is the moment that you can transform. This moment is the moment that you can let go of those patterns. This moment is the moment that you can behave in a different way if you really need to. And if it's not so much that you need to behave in a different way, maybe it's just that you need to make peace with why you did something and let it go. So if you could use a little bit of help with that, again, the karmic story consultations, the next 3 are available at only $99 each at the link that I just typed into the chat window. I'm only going to be on for a couple minutes today, just mainly because of time shortage, but let's take a look and see if there are any questions over in the chat window. And if you have a question yourself, all you other people who are kind of lurking in the background and being quiet, please feel free to ask. But we can learn from the current moment into the future, right? Yes, exactly. That's precisely what I was saying. Paying attention to the current moment and work to develop a better way going forward. That's precisely the idea. Is there a way to see if we will or will not come back again and when that might happen? Again, that's what I was saying earlier. There's no way to confirm those techniques. You can't test those techniques to see how valid they are or how invalid they are, because you'd have to have a time machine to go forward and go, oh, that technique that I used to see if I would come back again or when that might happen was actually a really good technique, right? So that one's a little bit tricky to do, and that's the bit that we have to try to understand. So let's see if anybody has any other questions. I just thought I'd pop on for a brief live today. I hadn't really kind of come on in a while, and I wanted to let you know about my karmic story consultation. But it wasn't really advertised, and so I don't expect that there's a lot of people here, and that's understandable. So I'm actually just going to stop for today. Maybe I'll try to come on live again, do this a little bit more in the future. Can we change our destiny? Destiny is a good thing to understand. So somebody did ask another question. So see, when I got ready to go, people asked more questions. So can we change our destiny? I think on a certain level, you may be asking, is everything fated or do we have free will? Okay, so there's a concept or an actual deity called Vishnu, but the deity of Vishnu represents the concept of the aspect of God, the infinite, whatever it is that you want to call it, that permeates everything. Vishnu's the aspect of God that permeates everything. I always jokingly tell my students that with that being the case, this coffee cup is Vishnu, the microphone is Vishnu. Right now, Vishnu is having a conversation with several Vishnus over a Vishnu because Vishnu permeates everything. Okay. So if Vishnu permeates everything, which really means that God is omnipresent, then there can actually be nothing outside of God's will, and there can be nothing that is not God as well. And actually, in Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra, this concept is addressed through giving the understanding that the planets are incarnations of Vishnu, and that the signs are the unconscious limbs of Vishnu as Kalarupa, the figure of time, which is a fancy way of saying the signs are you incarnated, not aware of the fact that you're Vishnu. So, on a certain level, the concept of free will and God's will are really just one and the same, right? We're just not fully aware of who we are. So that's why there's a seeming split between the concept of free will and God's will. So I'll say that again. We're not aware that we're God. We're not aware that we're tapped into that. Okay. And so because we have this duality existence in our brain, then we tend to see there being a difference between the concept of free will and God's will, but really they're one and the same. So coming back to our question, can we change our destiny? It's really hard to be that aware to change absolutely everything, but your actions do change your destiny. It may mean that you have something that seems really horrible to you that happens, but maybe if you hadn't rectified your karma on a certain level, you might have had a more horrible thing happen, right? And so these are the things that happen, and it's why it's always important for us to pay attention to the patterns in our life and in our horoscope and do our best to rectify those going forward. Because yes, your actions do matter and your actions can make a difference. So that's how we change our destiny. Can you create absolutely everything that you want? Well, no, because then we'd have a lot of people suffering. And the world is a world of existing in duality on a certain level. So, by its very nature, if we could create absolutely everything we wanted, then there'd be a lot of other people suffering, right? So, we have to be aware of these things that, there are some things that it's not so much that we're bound by them, we're just not aware of the full nature of our existence. And maybe that's a good thing because some of us would abuse that awareness if we got caught up in the ego side of it. And so we can't really be aware of that full awareness of who we are until we're ready to drop the ego, because otherwise it would not be safe to do so. Make sense? So thanks everybody for watching. Once again, the karmic story consultation, a full-on analysis of Rahu and Ketu in your own personal horoscope. Next 3 sessions that are scheduled are only $99 each. So if you go to the page to schedule and it still says $99, that means the offer is still on. If you go to the page and the price is back to normal, that means you missed the opportunity, but it might be on at some point in the future. But if you want to grab one of those 3 slots, I highly recommend doing so as quickly as you possibly can. And I'll talk to you the next time.